Okay, welcome everyone. A good Erev Shabbos and a good Chodesh as we have our first broadcast of the Shabbos table from my wonderful cottage up here in South Fallsburg, New York, in Elm Shade Estates with the help of Hashem. We thank our sponsors of this segment, the Rubin family, with the tefillah that they should be zeicher to a Ben Zachar, healthy Ben Zachar, and for Atzlach and Ruchnius and Gashmias, and also sponsored by an anonymous sponsor, a wonderful woman, sponsoring it for her two daughters to find their zivig quickly and easily. Now, in the main shir this week, we spoke about the wickedness of the wife of Korach, Iveles biyoda tehersena, that a foolish woman, with her hand, she destroys her family. The beginning of the verse speaks about the reverse, the opposite. Chachmois noshim bonsa boisa. The wisdom of women build their home. And the Gemara says, Zu eishes ein ben peles. Ein ben peles already pledged and gave an oath that he would join with the machlokes of Korach. And his wife, Rebbetzin, said, "What are you doing? This is not your argument. If Moshe wins, you're second to him. If Korach wins, you're second to him. Well, this is not your argument." So he said, "Yeah, but I gave my oath." She said to him, "I smell death here. Leave it up to me, I'll take care of it." He was a good man. He trusted his wife. She plied him with heavy drink, and he became shikar. So this way he became exempt from his oath. She put him to sleep in the basement, and then she sat in front of the tent with uncovered hair. When they came to pick up Ein, to go for the challenge with Moshe, they saw a woman that wasn't sneers. They were from people. You know, that's something about the Yetzer Hara. The Yetzer Hara is compartmentalized. They didn't have a Yetzer Hara for immodesty, for tznius. So they ran from an immodest woman. They had a Yetzer Hara for machlokes. That's, unfortunately, that's the way the Yetzer Hara works. You know, there are people that sit on the Mizrach Vant in the shul, and they daven, and they say Tillim, and they might go to a Daf Yomi or a Chakshir, and then they go and they cheat in business, or they're not nice to their workers. The Yetzer Hara is strikes different people in different ways. That's what it says. Ezel Gibar Hakivish is Yitzroi. Who is mighty? He conquers his Yetzer, because everybody has a different Yetzer. Today happens to be the yahrzeit of the great Rav Shlomo, the yahrzeit of the great Rav Shlomo Kluger. Rav Shlomo Kluger wrote around 200 svarim. I had the zechiyah when I learned Masechtas Nedarim. Masechtas Nedarim is unique, is it doesn't have Rashi. It has 4 Rishonim on the page. On the one side, where Rashi is what's called the Mefaresh. On the other side is the Ran. Then there's the Rosh and Tosfos. Rav Kluger wrote a Sefer, Nidre's Reason, with a Pirish on all 4 of these Rishonim. It was an amazing Sefer. I used it extensively when I learned Masechtas Nedarim. It's a big Sefer and so small print, and it's only one of his 200 svarim. The legend is that Rav Shlomo Kluger used to write with a pen in each hand, different things. That's how he wrote so many svarim. So Reb Shlomo Kluger says that a man should make it a point to listen to his wife. Why? Because the Gemara says in Sukkah, it's an interesting Gemara in Sukkah Daf Nun Beis. It says, Kol hagadol mechavero yitzrei gadol heimenu. Whoever is greater has a greater Yetzer Hara. So since a man has more mitzvahs than a woman, he has all the mitzvahs that are limited by time, he has also Torah learning, so since he has more mitzvahs, he's greater, so he has a bigger Yetzer Hara. A woman that has less mitzvahs has a smaller Yetzer Hara. So therefore, Reb Shlomo Kluger says that's why a person should listen to his wife. Listen to his wife. It's a big thing. The influence of women should never be underestimated. There's a story that a big Marbitz Torah who gave shiurim had an hour available, and he was trying to decide if he should give a shiur to men or he should give a shiur to women during that extra hour. So he went to ask Rav Shach, the Gadol Ador Rav Shach, and Rav Shach told him without hesitation, give the shiur to women. So he was surprised. He said, well, but men have a mitzvah of Talmud Torah. And when I teach the men, they're all fulfilling the mitzvah of Talmud Torah. The women don't have a mitzvah of Talmud Torah. And Rav Shach said, if you teach the women and you make an impact on the women will get their husbands to learn more. And therefore you'll accomplish both. Rav Shach said. Now, we know that the wife of Oin saved her husband. A wife should strive that her husband knows that he can count on her. That her husband knows that she has his back. That she's always looking out for him. That's Ain. His wife Mamish saved his life. It says, by the way, that when Korach, when they were swallowed down to the ground, Ain's bed started sliding out of the house, and she held on to the bed with all of her might. She literally saved her husband until the ground closed. If you remember, I said this word last week by a Sheva Brachas. One of my new daughters, Devorah Schwartz, and her husband, Moshe Schwartz, they made a Sheva Brachas. Moshe's brother became married, so I spoke by the Sheva Brachas. And I mentioned what I said last week, that when the Meraglim said that we're not going to be able to go there. Lo yuchal la'los. We can't, they're giants. So Moshe asked, how could that be? How can he even say such a thing? We saw the 10 plagues, we saw the Kriyas Yamsuf. How can we say that we won't be able to do it? It sounds ridiculous. So Moshe said that we weren't maminim from birth. We weren't raised believers. For the last 117 years in Egypt, we were idol worshippers. Then we saw fireworks. We saw the 10 plagues. We saw the splitting of the Yam Suf. That was, in a week's time, a year's time. The plague was a year. But Moshe said, belief that comes from a flash of revelation can be short-lived. What lasts long is the day by day, week by week, month by month, implanting emunah into our children, into our grandchildren. The same way, if a husband and wife, if a wife wants that her husband should really be able to say, I know I can count on her, that comes not from one thing. It comes from day-to-day little things that the husband and wife live up to the commitment at the chuppah, that from now on, he's the most important man in my life, and she's the most important woman in my life. That's what it comes from. Unfortunately, it's not so simple. A woman once complained to me, you know, my husband, he's a good guy. But if I'm sick, I can't count on him. If I'm sick, he's useless. So I told her, it's natural. You see, you're normally very nice to your husband, and he responds in kind. When you're sick, you're cranky, you're kvetchy, and maybe you're not so nice. So your husband reacts to you in the same way. I'm not saying that that's right, but that's natural. That's the reciprocal relationship of marriage. And that's why, about the Eishes Chal, what does it say in the next stanza, right after Botach B'Lev Baila? It says, Gemelasu toy v'loy ra kol yemei chayah. She returns good and not bad all the days of her life. It's because she has worked on herself. The husband has to work on this also. She has worked on herself that she doesn't respond in kind. And if her husband is going through a hard time, let's say he's out of work, let's say he's not feeling well, she only returns good. She doesn't return bad. And therefore the husband knows that when the chips are down, he can count on her. And this is not just an element of marriage. This is the very first thing in marriage. Botach B'Lev Baila. This idea that you have to demonstrate that your spouse is first. This idea that the spouse is first, this manifests itself in a lot of areas. For example, you have news to share, make sure you share it with your spouse first. Don't share it with your friend first on the phone, and then your friend tells it to her husband, and the husband says it to your husband. And he said, really? My wife didn't even tell me. I once heard of a situation that a woman told her best friend that she's pregnant before she told her husband. And this woman told her husband, the husband knew the husband of this pregnant woman, and he said, congratulations, your wife is pregnant. He didn't even know. He came in, he was so upset with his wife. I have to hear from a neighbor that you're pregnant? You have news? You share it with your wife first. You share it with your husband first. Your husband or your wife comes in after a day, shut your phone. If you're talking to somebody, unless it's an emergency, my husband just came in, I didn't see him the whole day, I want to talk with him. You get off the phone. And certainly if you're listening to something, you close what you're listening to. But you're listening to learning. You think listening to learning then is coming from the Yetzer Tov or from the Yetzer Hara? Where is it coming from? Even a man who has a mitzvah of limud Torah, his wife needs him. It's a mitzvah she'eni yochel la'asos al yedei acherim. He has to close the sefer. Making your spouse first means to give them prime time and not leftovers. Very important. That's very important. In Baruch Nafshi, he tells of a story of a Magid Shir for Lev La'achim. Lev La'achim is a very, very important organization of Kiruv, and he gives many shiurim. So his wife told him that, Sunday night, my nephew is having a bar mitzvah. That's what the wife said. He was giving a shir for Lev La'achim. He gave a shir every night. So his wife told him on Sunday, we have a bar mitzvah of my nephew. So he said, well, I hope you have a wonderful time. So she said, you're not coming? So he said, well, I have share. And he heard her mutter under her breath, oh, I'm going to go again and look like a living widow. So this man was a good man, and he went and asked Rav Zilberstein what to do. So Rav Zilberstein told him that the great Reb Chaim Pelagi writes that he always accompanied his wife to a simcha. He said, except one time, there was a bris, and his wife was late in getting ready, and he said to her, it's not right that I should keep Eliyahu Hanavi waiting. You'll meet me there. But otherwise, Reb Chaim Pelagi, you have to understand, Reb Chaim Pelagi also wrote 200 svarim. Reb Chaim Pelagi says, it says about a wife, Oava kigufa, you should love her like yourself, umechabdo yoiser megufay, you should honor her more than yourself. And therefore, if she is saying that she feels like she's a living widow because she's never accompanied by her husband, and she feels that she's being dishonored, so said Rav Zilberstein, that trumps Torah, because that's a mitzvah she'eni yochel la'asos al yedei acherim, and a mitzvah she'eni yochel la'asos al yedei acherim trumps learning Torah. That's what I said. Certainly, a wife vis-a-vis her husband who doesn't even have a mitzvah of limud Torah, her husband comes before. There's no question about that. And that we have to know that when we don't do this, it's not coming from a Yetzer Tov. It's coming from a Yetzer Hara that's trying to frustrate the marriage. Then another shaila arose. A person was going to collect money for Lev La'achim, and he had an opportunity to be a sandik by a grandchild's bris. But if he would have gone to the bris, then the money wouldn't have been raised, because he was the one that needs to raise the money. So it's interesting that, and this is again the way to look at these things. The Ben Ish Chai had some Talmidim that went to India, and they were mekarev a community in India. they sent to the great Ben Ish Chai the following question. We have a choice whether to build a yeshiva or a hospital. Which one should we build first? So the Ben Ish Chai says, the Sefer Hasidim says, that you do the mitzvah that won't be done otherwise. He says a hospital will be built, a yeshiva won't. You should build the yeshiva. And this is a yesod. Somebody else will be sandik, but nobody else will collect the money for Lev Lachem. We learned this out, by the way, from Moshe Rabbeinu. By Moshe Rabbeinu, remember, everybody went and became fabulously wealthy by taking the money from the Egyptians. That's what Hashem said. Sha'alna, please, I ask you, borrow silver and gold, and they all became wealthy, except for Moshe Rabbeinu. By Moshe Rabbeinu, it says that he was occupied in unearthing Yosef's body, Yosef's Atzmas Yosef. And Chazal say about Moshe Rabbeinu, Chacham leiv yikach mitzvahs. The wise at heart takes a mitzvah. Now the Yidden also got a mitzvah. They did. But his mitzvah is a mitzvah that wouldn't have been done otherwise. And that kind of mitzvah is a meis mitzvah. I mentioned in the shir, the main shir, that Ramosha said that no matter how bad a situation is, machloikis is even worse. Now, at least one time that he said this is a story that a town in mid-America was floundering in its spirituality, in its Yiddishkeit. So they looked for a great rabbi to come and bolster the town. And they found a great European rabbi, and they invited him, and they paid him a lot of money to come, and he came. But it didn't improve the situation, because he was a European rabbi. He didn't understand the American people. He didn't understand baseball. He didn't understand barbecues. And he couldn't relate to them. So then they wanted to bring in, this was at a time where Lakewood was fledgling, but they wanted to bring in a half a dozen great Lakewood younger man to rev up the city. And they offered a lot of money, but these Lakewood Jungelite, they were choshever people. They didn't want to make such a drastic move to go to mid-America without getting a bracha from Ramosha. And Ramosha told them that it's not a good idea, because if they come, people will leave the shul of the old rabbi and go to him, and the people that supported the old rabbi will be displeased, and it will cause machloikis. And he said, as bad as the situation is now, machloikis is worse. They didn't go. It's a beautiful end to the story. 3 years later, this rabbi himself realized that he's not producing fruit. So he went to Ramosha and asked him what to do. So Ramosha said, well, maybe it would be an idea to bring in some Lakewood boys. And 3 years later, it happened in the derech of Shalom. You always have to run away from achloikis. It says that Moshe Rabbeinu said, "Va'aron mahu kisalinu alav." And Aaron, what is he that you should complain about him? I saw a rather remarkable thing from Rav Avram Grudzinski, Zech Tzadik Levracha, Schus Yogan Aleinu Hashem Yimkim Damai. He said, he used to say to people, are you a mahunik? Aaron was a mahunik. So you'll say, what's a mahunik? I never heard this. It says that our ambition should be is Mahu Racham Afata Racham. Just like Hashem is merciful, you should be merciful. Mahu Chanan, just as He's gracious, Afata Chanan. Mahu Kodesh, Afata Kodesh. So Aaron Mahu, he's a Mahunik. He's like the Rabbeinu Shalom. It's really a fascinating shot in Aaron Mahu. It's really a fascinating shot. Aaron Mahu ki salinu alav. Aaron is a Mahunik. And that's a phrase that you never hear. What's a Mahunik? Mahu Racham, Afafta Racham. Mahu Chanan, Afata Chanan. Hashem is merciful, you should be merciful. Hashem is gracious, you should be gracious. That's a Mahunik. Of course, that's not Pashup Pshat in the Pasuk. Pashup Pshat in the Pasuk is Aaron Mahu. Aaron is a what? Like it says, V'nachnu ma. What are we? Aaron was an onav. How could you complain about Aaron who was such an onav? I saw a remarkable story about, I'm reading now a biography of the great Rav Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld, the venerable Rav of Yerushalayim. He was a Talmud of Rav Avram Shag. He actually came to Eretz Yisrael as a young married couple at the age of 24, leaving his entire family knowing that he would never see them again. He would eventually see his mother again. She would come to Eretz Yisrael. But his Rebbe was also Rav Avram Shag's Rebbe, the Heilige Ksav Sefer. When Rabbi Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld got married, he was such a great masmid and an incredible baki that the Ksav Sefer wrote him a Ksav when he got married. He wrote him as follows: Shloisha Heima Niflu. There are three traits that are wondrous. V'yachtov ala roiv lo nimtzu. And to have all three together is almost never found. Torah, Yerushalayim, Umidos Tovos. Torah, fear of heaven, and good deeds. Motzo chayim, the one who finds life, and then he wrote in parentheses, Sonnenfeld. So in order to show that this was achieved by Chaim Sonnenfeld, by Rav Yosef Chaim. It says that at that time he was known as Chaim because the name Yosef was only added later when he became critically ill. But young Chaim Sonnenfeld realized that his Rebbe wrote something praiseworthy. He kept it folded and he didn't look at it for 20 years. He only read it first when he was 40. Until 40, he didn't feel that it would be good to read words of praise from the Ksav Sefer. He felt it would hurt his humility. That's also a mahunik, one that feels more, what am I? I want to finish off with a thought from the Alexander Rebbe. The Alexander Rebbe says in this parsha that when the earth swallowed up Korach and his cohorts, there was a loud noise. V'kol Yisrael asher svivoseim nosu l'kolam. And all of Yisrael that were round about fled when they heard the noise. Says Rabbi Alexander, the Alexander Rebbe, there's a hint over here that when a person has distress, nasu l'kolam, you should flee to your voices, which means in trouble you should flee to prayer. That's what you should do when there's trouble. Oh, how important this is in today's day and age, when Klal Yisrael is in such trouble, and missiles are raining down on our brothers and sisters. And tens of thousands of breadwinners are not home to make parnasa for their family, are not home to guide their sons and daughters. They're not home to be a support for their wives. Their wives have to go down to the miklat with the babies themselves because their husband is fighting the battle. It's a very, 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 very hard time. We have to be nasu l'kailam. We have to flee to our voices. Remember when the Ziknei Midian told the Ziknei Moav, they asked, Ma tivan shel elu? Moshe Rabbeinu grew up in Midian. What's his secret? And they were told, Aim num nasai shel elu ela b'peh. Their profession is their mouth. Ela v'rechev, ela v'susim. The Goyim go with their chariots, with their horses, with their cavalry. V'anachnu b'shem Hashem Elokeinu naskeh. May Hashem answer our prayers for our brothers and sisters and for safety for Jews world over. We want to thank you all for joining us and wish you a wonderful Shabbos.